Last video of the series of looking and analyzing power dynamics with your host, Jack. And today we'll be talking about unintended consequences, or rather the law of unintended consequences. And I think it's the one I've been looking forward to talk about for a while. Because as we know, in every act of power, every policy, every revolution, every new ideology, there exist multiple layers of unintended consequences. And I want to make it clear that unintended consequences aren't a flaw of human planning and decision making, but they act as one of the few fundamental principles of being part of a complex system. Essentially, it is recognizing that systems respond in a very emergent and a very non-linear way, often amplifying or distorting even the most carefully laid out intentions. So, let's look further into this. To better understand this law, we need to know that power operates within a dynamic, interdependent system. In these environments, small actions in one node can ripple and cause a systemic shift somewhere else. Time delays obscure causal changes, making effects appear unconnected from their cause, and feedback loops amplify or invert intentions, transforming solutions into problems. Here are a few classic examples. Prohibition in the United States. The intention was to reduce alcohol consumption. Instead, it promoted organized crime and a thriving black market. The Green Revolution, which aimed to eradicate hunger and improve crop yields, led to deepening class divides in agricultural economies, and also contributes to massive environmental degradation. And social welfare reforms, which were designed to alleviate poverty in urban centers, have instead promoted generational dependency, suburban flight, and inner city decay, not because of bad intentions, but because of unexamined systemic feedback. The truth here is that no action exists in a vacuum, no matter how much we want them to. And that once a decision enters a system, it interacts with the culture, the memory, the economic flows, and institutional inertia and symbolic resonance. In its final form, the outcome may be unrecognizable from the intended effects. So, why does this happen, or rather, why do we let chaotic results come from good intentions? And it is primarily because most leaders believe that the system will behave the way they expect them to behave. Many military disasters and political firebacks stem from not ignorance, but excessive faith in model-based planning. Because planners in this case assume that the populace will behave rationally, that other actors will react predictably, that time will flow in a linear manner. But in reality, systems barely obey. Let's look to the invasion of Iraq by the United States. They launched with the goal of regime change and democratization, but instead destabilized the region, strengthened Iran, and led to the formation of ISIS. The Soviet Union's collectivization campaigns is another great example. They were intended to increase grain production and create an egalitarian agriculture, but instead led to mass famines, economic disruptions, and widespread resentment. Algorithms meant to optimize user experience on social media led to echo chambers, political radicalization, and democratic decay. In these cases, it was assumed that power could be applied linearly, but instead it created big resistance from the system itself. But why does unintended consequences matter? It seems really common sense, but I think it's important that we look into it, because my common sense isn't your common sense. So, why does it matter nowadays, right? So, because the world is way more complex, interconnected, and fragile than any other point in history. One misplaced sanction or ideological misread or one misaligned trade policy can trigger supply chain breakdowns, migration surges, financial panics, and realignment strategically that redraws alliances or provokes conflict. We've already seen this in a few places. Climate change policies unintentionally undermining smallholder farmers in the global south. AI deployment and surveillance leading to mass-scale repression as tools designed for optimization are repurposed for authoritarian control. Cybersecurity measures forcing underground innovators in black markets, increasing technical sophistication of criminal enterprises. Thus, unintended consequences are strategic liabilities, because every new law, algorithm, doctrine, developmental policy must be accompanied by a contingency plan. Which should answer the following things. What feedback loops could emerge from this decision? What symbolic interpretations might distort intent? What hidden factors might exploit a well-meaning shift? Because without this foresight, everyone risks becoming a very threat they set out to eliminate. So, let's harness this law instead of fearing it or being very doomerism about it, right? Because we should not be paralyzed by complexity. The point here is to not avoid action, but to act wisely within uncertainty. The law of unintended consequences is not a reason to do nothing, it's a reason to design power to adapt. We can do this by promoting modularity and not creating monoliths, because systems that are modular can be tweaked or isolated if a section fails, whereas a monolithic one, a single node is compromised, everything is collapsed. We should embed feedback loops that are fast and honest, because real-time feedback loops don't just report data but change decisions dramatically. And authorizing independent reviews, civilian oversight, or even adversarial audits, it would keep the main leadership's minds very open and eyes very open. And we should also conduct multi-order scenario mapping, aka predicting what potential tertiary, quaternary, secondary consequences would stem from a particular action. And because this will allow us to think beyond the rational actor model that is assumed when you think a system will behave, which is what happens when culture, myth, and emotions hijack intent, because that's probably going to happen. And finally, we must be willing to abort the mission, because the biggest mistake from unintended consequences or things that cause unintended consequences is not that we are acting upon it, but rather we do not stop acting upon it when conditions have changed unfavorably. Thus, we should not view the art of retreat, recalibration, and public acknowledgement as a form of weakness, but rather a mark of maturity. So, there we go. In this light, power must be exercised with humility, resilience, and systemic vision. Because the best strategy allows room for evolution. The best leaders accept that being right is not enough, and the best systems are those who learn from their own disruptions. So the moral of the story is everything is interconnected, and you'll see and you'll reap what you sow, not immediately, but over a long span of time. And I know evolutionarily we are geared towards short-term gains, but we must be more mature and try to control ourselves so that we genuinely consider, because every action we place into this collective system of life will backfire or aid you one way or the other. And thinking of the law of unintended consequences is a great way to mitigate, at least for yourself personally, unintended problems. But if you're a person in a position of power, then to be the most responsible and perhaps loved leader of your people, or whoever you're responsible for. That will conclude the last episode of the exploration of power dynamics. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I'm excited to have a discussion as well.